And we're going to dive right in today into this fourth message. So I was thinking, do you remember when you turned 16 and all of a sudden you could drive? I mean, in addition to the freedom that you got driving and going places that you wanted to go, along with that came some limitations, right? In fact, one of those limitations, I'm guessing for most of us was, and maybe this still is for you, for those of you who are just getting your license or starting to drive, maybe this is still true for you, was this thing right here called a curfew. Right? Remember those? In fact, that limitation was kind of okay on the weekdays, but on Friday and Saturday nights, not so much. We didn't want that. And you know why? Because on weekend nights, we just wanted to stay out a little longer. And we found ourselves suffering from what we'll call today as the 5 more minutes syndrome. And you already know what that is, even if you don't know what that is. I can stay, well, just 5 more minutes. And then 5 minutes later, what do? We say, well, I can only stay 5 more minutes. And before long, we had to be home in, you guessed it, 5 minutes. And when our kids started driving, thanks to technology, we knew if they left on time. Now, if you have ever experienced some version of this curfew dynamic as an adult, where your margin for error kind of got used up with that 5 more minute thinking, wherever it was maybe one more drink, or maybe one more business trip, or maybe one more sleeve of cookies, or just one more pair of shoes, or whatever it is, the outcome is almost always the same because the math starts to fall apart. One more rarely adds anything. When it comes to 5 more minute thinking, and possibly worse, it doesn't just not add, it actually subtracts in most cases. Oftentimes, one more actually results in less of what we value the most, right? And maybe it's been a while since curfew really affected you, and how fast you had to drive to be home in 5 minutes. Remember those scary days? But maybe your current driving habits are influenced by a very similar thing. Unless you are just a very unusual driver, you drive either slightly above the speed limit or right at the posted speed limit, right? While most of us feel a little or maybe even no guilt for driving a little faster than whatever the posted speed limit is, none of us, it's true for all of us, none of us want to get pulled over. And so what do? You know what we do. We choose the speed that we're convinced allows us to break the law while avoiding an encounter with the law. And my point, whether it's curfew, diet, driving, spending, our way, and you know this, you already know this, our natural way is to live as close to the line as possible. And which line? What line are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the line between legal and illegal. That line between responsible and irresponsible, right? That line between moral and immoral, or that line between ethical and unethical, the line between I'm still in control and I need help. I mean, it's human nature. It's human nature to get up to the edge of irresponsibility and disaster and embarrassment and to just stay there as long as possible. It's human nature to get by with as much as we can get by with without becoming our own worst enemy, without being grounded or embarrassed or maybe expelled or fired or kicked out, maybe even kicked out of the house. And here's the thing. Fueling this constant flirtation with disaster, it's a flawed assumption that affects us in many of our decisions. It's an assumption that often basically blocks our ability to actually make a good decision. And this assumption is why I think we are so okay living and dating and spending and eating and drinking and driving on the edge of embarrassment or worse. So to help make this clear, let me illustrate it to you by giving you some contrasting ideas, right? So here's the assumption, right? Here's the assumption. This is what I'm talking about. That if it's not wrong, it's all right. If it's not illegal, then it's okay. If it's not immoral, then it's acceptable. And if it's not over the line, well, then, hey, it's fine. Now, the problem with this way of thinking, if that's not obvious immediately to you, go ahead and put on your older brother or older sister hat. Or if you're a parent, go ahead and put on your parent hat for a minute. And I bet that even if we've never met, I bet that you don't set the bar low for your children. In fact, you don't set the bar low for anybody that you care about. To embrace these assumptions is just organizing your life or somebody else's life around the lowest common denominator, right? Essentially, what we're asking is, how low can I go? How close to wrong can I get without actually doing something wrong? Or if you're religious, how close to sin can I get without actually sinning? But it doesn't stop there, does it? Before long, we're asking, how far over the line can I go without getting caught or experiencing any consequences? I mean, how unethical, how immoral, how insensitive can I be before this thing gets out of control? How long can I neglect my family or my finances or my health without feeling any of the effects of that? I mean, how much can I indulge in an addictive behavior without actually becoming addicted? And look, it is a slippery, dangerous slope. And it all begins by asking the wrong question, which is there anything wrong with this? That's the wrong question to ask. And in fact, that's a question that usually leads to a second question, which is, how did I get myself into this? And drawing our lines, setting our limits, establishing our moral or ethical standards on the border between right and wrong, legal and illegal, healthy and unhealthy, eliminates any room for error. And it's foolish, and it is a dangerous way to live. And here's the thing. I haven't told you anything already that you didn't already know. I mean, come on, you know this, right? I know this. It's why we respond the way we do when someone we love starts getting close to one of those little vague lines, right? When we react to what they're doing, we're not reacting to what they're doing, we're reacting to where they're heading, right? In those moments. We just know intuitively that the question isn't, is there anything wrong or illegal or immoral about what we're doing or what they're doing? We already know that's not the question. We just know that there's a more important question, a better question that actually needs to be asked, and a question that if we were to ask it, that we would and maybe they would make a good decision. It's a question that if asked and answered honestly and acted on, they will and we will ensure that we avoid avoidable mistakes and these horribly regrettable moments. And that leads us to the fourth of our fifth questions that we're exploring in this series that we've been calling Rethink It. Now, if you've been tracking along with us, you know that behind this idea of this series is this often overlooked relationship between good questions and good decisions. Like, good questions actually set us up for those good decisions. And I think it's true that the decisions that you make are really no better than the questions that you ask. And I'm absolutely convinced that if you will ask and then answer honestly and then act on the answer to your answer to these questions, you will rethink your decision and you will make a decision that will bring you less regrettable outcomes. And your life will be better. And the people's lives who look to you and depend on you, they will be better as well. So let me just ask, have any of you ever experienced that? Maybe put in the chat right there, oh yeah, that's me. I've done that. I've got that regrettable moment, or I did that. I made that decision, or yeah, I understand. That's where I'm going. Let me know that you're with me. Let me know that you're understanding what we're talking about, because we aren't the only people, and you know this, we aren't the only people impacted by our decisions, are we? Maybe you're sitting in your living room. Look around the room right now. Those are the people that are so closely impacted. We aren't the only people impacted by our decisions or by our failures either. And so to bring us all to the same place, the first question we explored is what we called the integrity question. And the integrity question was simply this. We ask ourselves, am I being honest with myself? And then we needed to add a word, really. Because the easiest person to deceive in your life is the person that you see in the mirror every single morning. And as long as you're lying to yourself, you're never going to get to where you want to be, because you can't get there unless you're honest about where you currently are. And then our second question is what we called the legacy question. And this was a great question of, what story do I want to tell? And when the decisions that you're in the process of making right now, whether it's a relational decision or financial or academic or professional, whatever it is, when it's nothing more than a story you tell, what story do you want to tell? And the good news is you get to decide that, because as far as it's up to you, you write the story of your life one decision at a time. Now, the last time we were together, we explored what we called the conscience decision. And this conscious decision asked this question: what tension am I avoiding? And when everything looks good on paper and everybody's nodding in agreement, but there's something going on inside of you, and something just doesn't feel right about this option, but you can't quite put your finger on it. But there's just something not right. Pause and pay attention to that tension. And that brings us today to our fourth question. Let's call this one the maturity question. And the maturity question is simply this: what is the wise thing for me to do? The option that you're considering may be legal, it may be acceptable, it may be the industry standard for you. Not exactly immoral, but is it wise? Now, here's something that mature people understand, and this is why I love calling this the maturity question. Mature people understand, and they recognize, and they accept as fact, and don't miss this, that a decision can be both not wrong and unwise at the exact same time. Let me explain that. Isn't it true, and I kind of hate to bring this up, but isn't it true that your greatest regrettable moment or decision, and I'm talking about that moment you would go back and give almost anything to get back to that point and relive it or undo it and maybe unmake that decision, that moment. But isn't it true that your greatest regrettable moment was preceded by a series of unwise decisions? They weren't wrong decisions. They weren't illegal. They weren't necessarily immoral, but looking back, they were terribly, terribly unwise. And that series of unwise decisions paved the way to the moment in time you've regretted ever since. So to avoid 5 more minute syndrome, to create moral and ethical and financial space, ask of every invitation, every opportunity, every option that comes your way, ask the question, what's the wise thing for me to do? What is the wise decision for me to make? Now, the Apostle Paul was great at spelling this out for us, and the letter that he wrote to Christians that were living in Ephesus, we call it the book of Ephesians in the New Testament. And here's what he writes. He goes right to the heart of this tension that we all live with and wrestle with every single day. Here's what he says. He says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but, and here's our word, as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. So while a lot has improved since the first century, let me just tell you, human nature has not. Ancient people and then all of us modern ones are equally predisposed to live carelessly and unwisely right up to the edge of disaster. And pretty much just stay there as long as possible. And the Apostle Paul comes along and he just says, guys, stop it. I want you to be careful how you live. Don't be careless. This is the lens through which we are to evaluate every invitation and every opportunity that comes our way, whether it's financial, relational, or professional, or academic, whatever it may be. And thus our question, what is the wise thing for me to do? And so Paul continues a little bit more in his explanation, and here's what he says. He says, making the most of every opportunity. Literally in the Greek, this phrase could be translated redeeming or ransoming the time that we have. I mean, think about this. Don't you wish that you could go back and reclaim or redeem some time that you wasted on bad decisions along with the time that maybe you had to use making up for those bad decisions? I mean, I certainly do. I can think of a few right now. And for you, that may just be a few weeks or weekends scattered in your past, but it might also be an entire season of life. Either way, just imagine this. Imagine having the opportunity to relive or reallocate those days or those weeks, even years, not to mention the dollars. I mean, what if you had the opportunity to go back and invest that time in more productive, healthy, life-giving type activities? Imagine where you'd be today. I mean, look, I know this is hard, as painful as it is to think back, but that's what's necessary in order to appreciate what Paul's words are to us in Ephesians. Because here's what he's doing. Paul is inviting you, he's inviting us to invest our time wisely from this moment forward. From this day forward, you and I are invited to make the most of and to redeem or to leverage the most, our most valuable asset, our time. To invest your time in a way that actually propels you forward toward a different and a better future. But Paul wasn't quite through when he said that, and he adds this sort of odd kind of warning. And he writes, making the most of every opportunity. Why? He says, because these days we're living in, they're evil. I mean, evil days. I mean, what could have been so evil in the first century? What could be so evil today? What is he talking about? Well, you know this. We don't live in a morally, ethically neutral culture, do we? And they didn't either. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you heard or saw or maybe even read an ad that encouraged you to be careful? When is the last time someone out there in your world said, be wise, be self-controlled? And I'm just guessing here, but I'm guessing never. I mean, has a salesperson ever suggested you go home and think it over before you make the purchase? Probably not. The pull of culture is now, not later. It's more, not less. This is why our fourth question, practically speaking, may in fact be the best question we could ask ever. It's why it's called the maturity question. And so in an attempt to maybe attach your conscience a little bit to this fourth question, I want to suggest that you ask this question, this fourth question, the maturity question, from the fourth question from three different vantage points. Your past, your present, and your future. Let me tell you what that looks like. It looks like this. In light of my past experience and my current circumstances and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? Now, I'm sure you've heard this saying, or maybe something like it, that those who can't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. And maybe on a personal level, it could be said this way, that those who don't pay attention to what got them in trouble yesterday are liable to end up in the same trouble today. The point being is our past and our personal past predisposes us to specific temptations and addictions and blind spots, just to name a few, right? And those temptations and addictions and blind spots, they may not be that for everyone. So in light of your past experience, your personal past experience, what is the wise thing for you to do? Every decision, every invitation, every opportunity that comes your way needs to filter through that question. So let me just ask you, what about you? In light of my past experience, what is the wise thing for you to be doing financially, professionally, academically right now? I mean, where are you set up to fail because of something in your past that perhaps Maybe it was something you didn't even have any control over, but it happened in your past. In light of your personal past experience, what's the wise thing? Not the what's the get by thing, not the what everybody else is doing thing. What is the wise thing for you to do based on your past experience? And then our current circumstance. Now, you know this, is that life is seasonal, right? And so you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people around you to take your current emotions and your current state of mind into account whenever you're making a decision. I don't really like this, but it's super true. Most of the apologies I've had to make come from my tendency to react in and to the moment that's happening. Because when I wait, my responses are better. When I wait, my responses are more polite and more accurate. When I'm mad, the wise thing for me to do is nothing. Just stop. So when asking the fourth question, we do well when we consider what's going on right now. In light of your current circumstances, your current state of mind, what is the wise thing for me to do? I mean, let me ask you, did you just get out of a relationship? Would it be wrong to jump back into another one? No. But in light of your recent circumstances, the emotions that are trailing behind, is it the right thing for you? Remember, our greatest relational regrets are almost always preceded by a series of unwise decisions. I mean, look, jumping back into the dating game on the heels of divorce or breakup is usually a gateway decision that leads to regret. In light of your current circumstances, what is the wise thing for you to do? And that brings us to our third and final perspective of this question. In light of my past experiences, my current circumstances, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? Now, from time to time, I'll bring up this, what I feel like is this thought-provoking question. And I'll ask you this question. What breaks your heart? And I usually just wait and let that sink in. And so I want to tell you what breaks my heart. And it's related to this third facet of this question. You know what breaks my heart? Is watching people make decisions that undermine their own hopes and dreams, future hopes. It breaks my heart to watch individuals or couples make relationship decisions that actually end up undermining their relationship. It breaks my heart to watch teenagers make decisions that are going to result in consequences that follow them around for the next year or maybe the next decade or two. It breaks my heart to watch parents that parent in a way that is going to eventually drive a wedge between them and their children. It breaks my heart to watch people engineer their own unhappiness. Perhaps that's why I am actually convinced that this third application of this fourth question is the most important application. In light of your future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for you to do? Chances are you have some idea of what you want your future to look like, right? I mean, you have a mental picture of a preferred future, of what it could be and what it should be. And you've maybe even gone to the trouble of writing down what that future would look like. You may not have a plan on how to get there, but you have some sense of where you want to go, right? And I'm just guessing, but I'm guessing you have some sense of that. But I'm guessing that when you envision your future, you don't envision yourself alone in that future, right? Because nobody does. But here's the challenge. When it comes to your dream, I'm telling you, the deck is stacked against you because life is just really hard on dreams. And it's like you're always pushing into the headwind. And if that's the case, and if you're not careful, you will have the potential to contribute to the failure of what you hoped for. And here's the thing. I don't want you to rob yourself of your own future. Nobody plans to undermine their own future. But asking the wisdom question and acting on the wisdom question, that's how you plan not to do that. in light of your future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for you to do? And asking this question brings clarity to whatever option that you are thinking or considering doing. Because asking this question is like shining a light out into the darkness that makes the shadow go away so that your best option actually becomes clear, sometimes painfully clear. In fact, they become so clear that we end up tempted to look away from it because it's so clear when we say, what's the mature thing for me to do? And all of a sudden our option becomes clear. We're tempted to look away from that and to excuse ourselves from that. Because what I'm already doing, I'm not hurting anybody. I can handle it. What I'm doing, there is no law against it. God will forgive me. And my all-time personal favorite I hear all the time is, well, there's nothing in the Bible about it. And here's the thing. Our excuses are powerful and influential because they're mostly true. You aren't doing anything wrong yet. You can handle it initially. It isn't illegal. And you're right. There is nothing in the Bible about it. And yes, God will forgive you. But so what? I mean, all of that is beside the point, right? The purpose of this fourth question isn't to stop us from doing something wrong. It's to keep us from doing something unwise again. Unwise is the gateway to another regrettable moment in our life. It paves the way to that tipping point that in some cases becomes the point of no return. So let me just ask you, would you be willing? And here's the challenge. Would you be willing to put away your old, worn-out excuses once and for all? Come on, these excuses have never served you well. They just silence our conscience and they cloud up our logic, and ultimately they just reduce our ability to hear the voices of wisdom around us. Do you know what our excuses do? Our excuses lead us to the edge of regret. And once they get us there, do you know what they do? They abandon us there with no chance of return. And you've been there, and I've been there. And I don't want us to ever go there again. So just decide to be done with all of that. Instead of excusing yourself forward, dream and plan your way forward. And ask, in light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? In light of where you want to be financially 5 or 10 years from now, what's the wise thing for you to be doing right now? I mean, you're going to want to be somewhere 5 to 10 years from now financially, right? I mean, shouldn't you decide where that is? And do you know what? If you don't decide, do you know that someone else will? And do you know who will decide? It will be retailers and lenders who care nothing about you. They will decide for you. And what's true financially is true relationally and academically and professionally as well. So come on, where do you want to be? Decide. Write it down. If you're single, come on, in light of what you ultimately want relationally, even romantically, what is the wisest way to conduct your relationships right now? What are you doing right now that has the potential to rob you of your preferred future relationally? I mean, are you being honest with yourself? Really? Are your current relationships like paving the way to your preferred relational future? Or are they escorting you to a place out on the edge where you don't want to be? A place you swore you would never go again. What is the wise thing for you to do right now? Look, if you're married and you're planning to go the distance together and maybe enjoy some grandkids together, what can you do right now to facilitate that dream? Or who or what puts that dream at risk? I mean, you have children. Come on, what do you envision for your children in the future? You envision something there. What is it? What do you envision? I mean, like, what do you envision in terms of relationship with your children in your future? And what is the wise thing you can do right now to be protecting that? Here's the thing, and you know this. Everybody ends up somewhere in life, right? I want you to decide to live and to end up somewhere on purpose. And wisdom paves the way there. Don't settle for good. Don't settle for legal or permissible or acceptable or even just bearable, because if you do, you'll eventually find yourself living dangerously close to another regret. And you're better than that. And you deserve better than that. Your family and the people who depend on you, they deserve better than that. Think about this. You are a very unique blend of your past experiences, your current circumstances, and your future hopes and dreams. And this wisdom question allows you to customize the decision-making process to your specific professional, financial, relational, or academic desires. So ask it. What is the wise thing for me to do? You owe it to yourself to know that, right? In fact, I think you owe it to the people depending on you as well. So one more time, one last time, in light of your past experience and your current circumstances and your future hopes and dreams, what is it? What is the wise thing for you to do? And we'll pick up this series and end it next week right there. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you for the opportunity we have to gather when we can't gather. And so, Father, I hope today that as we've talked about this maturity question and in Paul's wisdom to us and his kindness in sharing with us to look at our past as we look at our hopes and our future dreams. Father, I pray that you would help us to ask the question. Each of us are up against circumstances and opportunities and invitations right now. Would you help us to ask the question of what would be the wise thing for me to do? And Father, help us not to just ask, but to answer honestly and then act on the answer to that question. And we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. I'm so glad you've been here. Y'all stay warm and safe, and we'll see you next weekend.